politics. One major political issue in the 1950s was the Red Scare. This was in February 1950 when a senator from Wisconsin, Joseph McCarthy, announced that he had with him a list of 205 people in the State Department that were known members of the American Communist Party. With communism spreading in Eastern Europe and China, the American public was growing frightened of an internal invasion of the government. For 2 years, McCarthy's committee investigated a large number of people, and if anyone admitted to being part of the Communist Party lost their jobs. The only way to show that you had abandoned the Communist Party was by naming other people you saw at the communist meetings, even if those names weren't valid. Around 1954, Dwight Eisenhower instructed his VP Richard Nixon to attack McCarthy's methods. The Senate's investigation into the U.S. Army being televised helped expose McCarthy's tactics. The Red Scare ended December of that year. One major political issue in 1954 Another major political issue in 1954 was the Supreme Court ruling on the Brown v. Board of Education case, ruling that separate but equal established by the Jim Crow laws were inherently unequal. The struggle against racism entered the mainstream of American life. The two political parties that fought for control of the government were the Democratic and the Republican Party, but the most conflicting forms of government at the time were capitalist USA and communist Russia. One major event that had an effect on the politics in America was the protesting of the Vietnam War. At the time, teens refused to go to war and protested by burning their draft cards. This led to the American government having to withdraw due to the will of the people. In the 1960s, the major event that had an effect on the politics of the United States was when Martin Luther King Jr. protested, demanding equality for African Americans. He and his followers organized numerous marches, rallies, and strikes that were all nonviolent. He convinced President Kennedy and later President Johnson to push legislation to end discrimination. He was given the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, and in April 1968 was assassinated. Another political issue of the 1960s was the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Russia put nuclear weapons in Cuba in 1962, thus threatening U.S. safety. Another conflict between communist Russia and capitalist America. The two countries were at the brink of war until President John Kennedy set up a blockade around Cuba, demanding Russia to withdraw their nuclear weapons from Cuba. The two leaders then realized the devastating possibility of nuclear war, so both agreed to a deal, and later signed the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1963. The two leaders then realized the devastating possibility of nuclear war, so both agreed to a deal, and later signed the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in July of 1963, thus lessening the tensions between U.S. and Russia. Another major event that had stunned the whole United States was the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963 while he was campaigning in Dallas, Texas. He was shot in the neck and also in the head while on a motorcade towards the Trade Mart where he was going to deliver his speech. He was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. and at 2:38 p.m. Lyndon Johnson was sworn into office in a brief moment before the plane took off.